Hey, I wanted to share with you a few landscaping tips today, 3 actually. Good landscaping, if it's done right, really makes a difference. And so I wanted to point out tip number 1, which is right behind me. So come on, check it out. We've basically lined this walkway, which before it had a bunch of plants that didn't match. Some were dead. We took them all out, and we put in some really pretty lavender plants on both sides of the walkway. We put in these beautiful tree roses, which are just starting to come to bloom. In about a week, we have this house going on the market. They should all be fully in bloom. You can see over here, these guys are already blooming right here. We've got 40 lavender plants, 10 tree rose bushes, and it really helps set the ambiance of this house as you're walking up, going up to the front door. And that's my tip number 1. We're gonna go in the backyard, and I'm gonna show you tip number 2 next. Now we're in the backyard, tip number 2. So it is a beautiful backyard. Check this thing out, it's like a park. I mean, we could literally charge admission. It's grass day, it's Monday, and we're putting all the grass in. So we've got about half of it in. Tip number 2, I wanted to point out to you the length of this yard, and we're putting in these petunias in the back. They're white, they're not in yet. We're gonna put them in by the rocks in the back as a focal point to kind of elongate this yard. So when you walk into the house, come on over here, check this out. We've got basically the house over here, and we've added the grass all the way up to the patio. It used to have a bunch of benches here that blocked it, so we've got this long yard, which is a super big yard for Palo Alto, and we're bringing the eye back there. So show you basically, first impression someone's gonna get when they walk in is see all of this yard, and we want to draw the eye back to make them feel it's even larger. And that's tip number 2. Tip number 3 is next. Okay, we're now in the back of the yard here, right next to my favorite type of tree, which is a dogwood. I have one in my yard. But I wanted to point out the next thing, which is the type of bark you should use when you're putting in landscaping to really accentuate the yard. There's several different types you can use. Some people use like a really large tan bark, which really doesn't look good. It looks bulky. It doesn't also hold down the weeds, which is another purpose of the ground, being covered by the bark, is that it doesn't let the weeds grow through, because the acidity of the bark typically prevents the weeds to come through, at least a lot through, and you can pull them. Next type of bark is like a fir bark, which is also kind of puffy and doesn't lay flat on the ground. And so that one's not the best type. There's also a red bark, which is kind of dyed red. And it looks a little bit cheap, honestly, and not something that is really going to accentuate the look and feel like this park that we have. We want it to feel like a park, and so we want it to feel natural. And so there's 2 types of bark that really are probably the preference. One is a dark bark, which is almost a black. Comes in a very close to black color, which will show you. That bark basically is for a more contemporary house. It's very nice. You could use it actually here, but there's a lot of trees here that are going to drop leaves, so it might look good for like a week, but then all the leaves are going to be on top, it's not going to look so great. The type of bark we're going to use is a redwood mini bark, which I'll show you now, and that type of bark really holds firm to the ground. They're smaller pieces, and if you can see, we've already put a lot of it down. So in this yard, we're not done with it yet, but there's some piles of the bark like right here. It's very, very nice. It's going to go down on the ground and really finish off the yard and make it feel like that park that it already is, and people are really going to just enjoy it. It's going to be in the background, but it really helps set the stage for the whole experience and the whole yard. And so that's my tip number 3. Just to review, we've talked about 3 points. The first one was in the front yard, adding some curb appeal with flowers on either side of the front walkway. The second point was the long extension of the yard here with the focal point flowers in the back, right behind me, that are all in. It's all done. Really excited to show it to you. And the third point was what kind of bark to use in a yard like this park-like yard, which is super pretty. We have the redwood mini bark, which you put all around, and so that looks really, really nice. So those are the 3 points. Thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you next time. Like or subscribe if you like this video.